Good morning, everybody. Hello. Big welcome to Saul's class, and this is the lesson number 5. We are sharing together our knowledge, and we are learning about different topics that are interesting and necessary for you to know in order to increase your skills, your English skills. So today we are going to check and review and learn a new topic that is tag questions. I know that this topic is very simple and easy for you because it's simple due to its structure, and so if you pay attention and you work with me, it's gonna be so easy for you. So now we are going to start first of all with an activity in order to introduce you to the new topic. So I don't know if you have checked before or you have heard about comic strips. So I think that as you're from the new generation, I think that it's not so common for you to think and to hear about comic strips, but in the past they were so common and popular, and if you ask to your father or even to your grandpas, they will say that they were so common and popular between within adolescents and children. So if you want to know more about comic strips, you can go and ask your grandfather or your father maybe. So today we're going to read some comic strips in order to drive to the past and also to introduce ourselves to this topic that is that question. So I want you to analyze the words or the phrases that you see that in the reading passage are underlined. So I want you to think and analyze why are they different or what calls your attention about these are underlined words. Yeah, so we're going to start reading now. Bang, says it. You're dead. No, I'm not. You missed. I did not. You cheater. I'm here talking to you. Aren't I? Pay attention. Okay, then. Bang. My, what a miserable shot you are. So as you can see here, the underlined part of the sentence is aren't I, so I want you to pay attention. Let's see the second set of pictures. So as you can see, the boy is in the bathroom. So flash, weeha! I'm done with my bath. That was quick. Here we don't have any underlined phrase, but then we're going to see another comic strip. Hot day, isn't it? I'll say, but it's the humidity that really gets to me. You don't like it when it's humid? Not at all. Then you'd better get out quick. So, comic strips were so popular because you had to read and understand the pictures, and you have to connect both and to understand them. So I hope you like these comic strips and understand and introduce yourself to the new topic. So then we have another one. Hi Hobbs. Good heavens, what's wrong with you? Mom said if I keep making this face, it will freeze like this forever. You really think so? It's worth a try. I'll bet pictures are gardening already. I always like herbs. So we have finished with comic strips, but I want you to now think about the underlined phrases that we saw in the comic strips. So, what was different in this structure that you have already seen? Have you deduced about when do we use tag questions? So I want you to think about it, and then if you don't, I invite you to read once again these comic strips and try to realize a little bit when we use tag questions. So if you have already have an answer, we can continue. If not, you can pause the video and come back to the previous slides in order to check once again the different structures that are underlined. So we're going to continue now. I'm going to explain you now what is a tag question or question tag. They are also known as question tags. It is a sentence with a question phrase connected at the end. As you can see here, we have the sentence part, the one that is with the color white. Then you have to be very careful with it because you always need a comma after the sentence part, and then we have the tag part or the question tag or the tag question. So as you can see, it's a sentence with a question phrase connected at the end, and they are connected by a comma. You don't have to forget the comma because it's an essential part of tag questions. Then we need to know what is the purpose of the tag question. As you have seen in the previous slides when we were checking the comic strips, the characters use the question tags. They were expecting that the author agree with their statement that they said in that moment. So we use tag questions in order to when we want the listener to agree with our statement. But we have two details here that are going to help us to determine in a deeper way the purpose of the question tags or the tag questions. So as you know, they are used when we expect the listener to agree with our statement. But in a deeper way, in a more specific way, we use tag questions when we want to clarify information. In this case, the speaker expects an answer when we use a tag question. So let's suppose that I'm in a concert talking with another person, but the music is too loud, so I heard that the other person told me something, but I want to clarify what the other person says or what I understood and what I listened from him or her. So I use a tag question at the end in order to clarify the information and avoid misunderstandings. So in this case, we have here some examples, different examples from the one that I have illustrated you. So we study English, don't we? I'm expecting an answer from the other person. Raphael is singing at the party, isn't he? I'm your teacher, aren't I? So as you can see here, we're trying to clarify this information with the tag questions that are at the end of the sentence part. So we're expecting that the speaker gives us an answer. So then we have another specific purpose when we use that questions. So we use also that questions when we want to agree with someone. So in this case, the speaker doesn't expect an answer as in the previous case that we use that questions to clarify information. But in this case, we just want to agree with someone. In this case, we have these examples. You are falling asleep, aren't you? Also, the party was a lot of fun, wasn't it? I didn't win the lottery, did I? As you can see here in these examples, we are using that questions to the second purpose, to agree with someone. So now that we know when in which situations we have to use that questions, it's necessary in addition to know how these two parts of the that questions they interact between them. So first of all, as you know, we need the sentence part, then the comma, and then the tag question or the question tag. So it's important for us to know when the statement is affirmative, then we need a comma, and then the tag question will be negative. Here we have two examples that will help us to understand how this works. So, that's your sweater. This is the sentence part, and as you can see here, it's affirmative. Then we need a comma. Don't forget the comma neighbor. And then we have here that question. In this case, it's negative because the sentence part is affirmative. Then we have here another example that says, you study English, comma, don't you? As it is affirmative, then we have the negative form. Also, we have another case when the statement or the sentence part is negative, then that question is affirmative. We have here two examples also to illustrate and figure out how this works. So, Joel didn't do his homework. This is the sentence part, and as it is negative, we need to have the tag question in a positive or affirmative structure. So, Joel didn't do his homework, comma, did he? Cesar and Orlando aren't paying attention, comma, are they? As you can see, when the sentence part is affirmative, we need that question in a negative way. When it's the opposite, when we have the sentence part in negative, we need that question is in affirmative way. So, also you need to be very careful with this fact that I'm going to tell you, is that you need to form or build that question depending on the auxiliary that we need, or the auxiliary of the sentence part. So as you can see here, in the first sentence, we are talking about present tense, and we are talking about the present tense, but we're using the verb be. So the auxiliaries of the verb be in the present tense is and are. So that question will be built using the auxiliary, in this case is, according also to the subject. Here we are talking about also present simple, but we are using the present simple with another verb. So as you know, the auxiliary of the verbs in the present tense different from verb be, or the two verbs is do or does. So in this case we are using the subject you. So in this case the auxiliary is do. So that question is, don't you? And what if we're using present perfect? You will use the auxiliary of the present perfect. If you are using the past simple, you are using in that question the auxiliary of the past tense, in this case did. Or if we're talking with the verb be, was, were. It depends on the statement and the that question and the auxiliary that you will use to build that question. So you need to bear in mind these two tips. When the statement is positive, the that question is negative. When the statement is negative, that question is positive, and that question will depend and will be built on with the auxiliary of the based on the sentence part. You need to bear in mind these two things. Then we have some important rules that we have to take into account also when we build sentences or tag questions. The first important rule is that when we use the pronoun I, as you know, its verb to be is am, but we're not going to use the verb to be am in order to build that question. Instead of am, we're going to use are. So be plus I is going to be are when we talk about that questions. So here we have an example that says, I'm your teacher, aren't I? It's correct. We don't have to say aren't I. It doesn't exist. So you have to use aren't or are when we talk about the pronoun I. So the second rule that we have here and we have to bear in mind also is that when we use let in the sentence part, that question will be built with shall we, because as you know we don't have here an exact auxiliary that we can take for this grammar part. So when we use in the sentence part let's, the sentence that question will be shall we. Also with imperatives, it's important to bear in mind that that question is will you, as we don't have subject. Also when we talk in the sentence part about nobody, never, hardly, that question is positive and we will say nobody understood, did they? We have here examples. So for the second case, let's go to cyber. We have shall we with imperatives. Sit down. Will you? With nobody, never, hardly, or nobody interested. Did they? That will be positive, as its context maybe is negative. So then we have some important tips for us to understand better question tags. So first of all, we must bear in mind that in replies to question tags we use short answers. When we expect that the other person answer us, we expect that the other person use short answers. For example, he's very tall. Isn't he? Yes, he is. Also, another important tip that you need to know is that we need to notice that when the information is not correct, people use actually after the short answer. So you've been here before, haven't you? The person use actually after the short answer because it's not correct. No, I haven't actually. Also, we need to bear in mind that as I have said in the previous slides, we also need to notice the comma before the question tag. We love to watch movies together, don't we? We need to bear in mind also that the comma is going to match the sentence part and the tag question, so you don't have to forget it, you mustn't forget it, you shouldn't forget it. The comma is very important in question tags. Finally, we have arrived to the step in which we have to put in practice everything that we have learned from the very first slide of this lesson. So, in this case, we have here two columns with different parts. First of all, the sentence part and then the tag question. So we have to read each sentence part in order to know which of these tag questions corresponds to this sentence part. So, as always, I suggest you to pause the video and think your answers and write your answers down your notebook in order to comprehend them and have enough time to complete this exercise. Because as you know, I'm going to then say this and the answers quickly, so you can pause it to think about better your answers. And you will work in this way. So first of all, you need to read the sentence part. You've called the movers. So as we have to analyze, first of all, this sentence is affirmative. So I need to look for a tag question that is negative. This is the first hint that we have in order to find the correct tag question here. Then we have that this sentence is in the present perfect, so the auxiliary is have. So the question tag needs to have as an auxiliary the auxiliary have, and it needs to be negative. So you're going to analyze each of these sentences in this way, and then we're going to be able to find the correct tag question of each sentence part. So now we're going to just check the correct answers. So this tag question corresponds to the sentence part number 11. It says, we can't turn off electricity yet, can we? The next one, do we? We don't need any more boxes, do we? Number 8, Jack isn't buying our bookcases, is he? Then we have number 12, moving is hard, isn't it? The sentence number 2, so they are coming tomorrow. The correct answer is, aren't they? Then we have the sentence part number 4 that says, you haven't finished packing, have you? Then the number 6, Pablo is going to help us, isn't he? Then we have the sentence part number 3, this isn't going to be cheap, is it? Then, number 1, you've called the movers. We had as hints that the question tag needs to be negative and with auxiliary have. So as you can see, it's having you the correct answer. Then we have number 9, sentence part says, we need to disconnect the phone. And the correct answer is, don't we? Then we have number 7. We can put some things in storage. Can we? And finally, number 10 says, the movers are unpacking the books for us. Are they? So then we're going to continue with another activity in which you have now to write the correct question according to the sentence. but in this case you have to write. So as always, I suggest you to pause the video, and now we're just going to check the correct answers, and you will have enough time to complete this activity by pausing the video and then playing it again to know the correct answer. So the first exercise says Sarah can't play the tambourine. Then, can she? So you know we're here using the modal can't, and it's in negative, so we need to use the modal that we are using in the sentence part. In this case, can, and as it is negative, in that question will be affirmative. Then we have let's go to a cocktail. The correct answer is shall we? I remember you that I give some tips in order to work with this kind of structure. When we have let's, we're going to use shall we as a tag question. Sorry, tag question. Then stop playing with yourself. Will you? As it is an imperative, you are using here will you? We won't have a quiz today, will we? No one did the homework, didn't they? Tomorrow isn't Halloween, is it? I'm not being fooled, aren't I? There isn't a pool here, is there? So if you have these answers, it means that you're doing very well and you're doing great. So we're going to continue with the next exercise here that I want to propose you. Also you have here to think about the correct question tags for these statements. So the correct answer for the first exercise is I'm right, aren't I? You've been working late again, haven't you? Then you haven't got a pen by any chance, have you? Let's have a break, shall we? Sit down a moment, will you? You met your friend in Paris, didn't you? We're going to London on Saturday, aren't we? Then we have you haven't broken that as well, have you? So the correct answers are there, so you can compare now your answers with the correct answers and then analyze if you have done properly or not, and if you don't, analyze and think why didn't you achieve it. So then we're going to continue with another exercise in which you have to choose the correct question and according to the sentence part. So the first exercise says there are no books on the desk. The correct answer is are there? These are my pictures. Then comma, and then we have the question tag that is aren't they? Also, we had 4 lessons on Monday. The correct question for this answer, the correct answer for this sentence part is, didn't we? Bob didn't play football yesterday, did he? My parents never work on Sunday. The correct answer here is, do they? My uncle gets up at 7 o'clock. Doesn't he? Your friend is playing football now. The correct answer here is, isn't he? And my uncle has no children. The correct answer is, does he? So, now, I know that you have done properly and you have achieved the goals of these exercises to know what you have learned from this lesson about questions. So in order to finish with this lesson, we have to remember that question tags or tag questions are also known with a second name and are needed in order to, first of all, to clarify and then to confirm information and to agree with someone about something. So then we have to remember that tag questions are always built based on the sentence part. If it is positive or affirmative, the tag question will be negative, or if the sentence part is negative, the tag question will be affirmative. And also the tag questions are built with the auxiliary of the sentence part. So you have to be very careful when building these tag questions, and there are also some tips when we don't know exactly what is the auxiliary. For example, when we use let's, when we use imperatives, and so on. And also you have to remember that we definitely need a comma between the sentence part and the tag question. It's so easy, isn't it? Finally, I want you to send a little fun homework that in which you have to make a short comic strip. As you know, in the first part of this lesson, we started by using comic strips and by using tag questions there. So what are you going to do is that we are going to look for what is a comic strip, and as you know, I have explained you what's a comic strip, but you are going to talk with your grandpa or with your parents about comic strips in order to know deeply what is it. And then you're going to plan your own comic strip, you're going to plan your story and present this comic strip in 10 panels. Each panel must have a written visual report. And don't forget to use tag questions in these comic strips. You're going to use tag questions and your imagination. So be creative in order to achieve and develop this activity. Finally, this is the end of this lesson, and if you have any question you can ask me, and you can write down a suggestion, or if you have any doubt you can write it down, and I'm always here for helping you, supporting you, and always remember that if you have doubt you have to answer, you don't have to keep in your heart, because it does not work there, it works outside when it's solved out. So if you have a question you have to ask. So it is all. Thank you very much for being here. I'm so glad to share this time with you. Thank you very much, and do not forget to be with me the next week in the next lesson. So thank you very much. Bye bye.